Hello my fellow Archons, and welcome to another video. Today we're diving into a new series where we analyze each house in Grim Reminders, looking at their strengths and weaknesses, and trying to become more familiar with this general game plan. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at House Untamed, returning after only one set of absence. They weren't in Winds of Exchange, but they've been in every other set including this one. Without further ado, let's get into it. Let's start out by taking a look at Untamed's burst potential, which has been one of their strongest and most identifying features since their very beginning. One of the cards that caught people's eye immediately was Rot Feast, netting you an ember each time a creature is dealt damage for the remainder of your turn. This applies to multiple instances of damage dealt at once, meaning if you deal damage to 3 creatures at once, using something like Ember Storm, you would gain 3 ember. We also have the newest incarnation of Hunting Witch in Haunting Witch, giving you an ember each time you play a creature while you're haunted, an extremely simple way to gain ember quick. Dust Pixie is no longer around, but Grave Pixie is. It only has 1 Ember Pip on it, but is archived when destroyed if you're haunted, so you may be able to get multiple plays out of it. In multiples, it can be especially potent, or when you're under the effects of a Haunting Witch. Definitely prefer Grave Pixie over Mad the Mad. Circle of Life is a card that rewards you for being haunted, but also for good timing as well, since the effect is symmetrical. If you're haunted and the opponent isn't, that's the ideal time to play it. Another interesting one is Sabira the Medium, who gains you 3 Ember when you shuffle your discard pile into your deck. This could happen naturally when you reach the end of your deck, or you could force a reshuffle with things like Till the Earth or Spooky Charge. And speaking of Spooky Charge, it's a great way to finish off a bursty turn, by forging a key at current cost if you're haunted. It's a very cheap and easy key cheat, and as we've seen, there are plenty of good ways to build up to it. Of course, any other pip or reap can get you closer to it as well, or 2 in the case of the returning Dew Fairy. Board control is an area Untamed has historically had some decent tools in, seen in things like Nature's Call and Savage Clash, but it seems to have weakened significantly in this department this set. Ember Storm, which we just mentioned, is one of their best tools in this regard, essentially sack of coins at common, allowing you to distribute that damage wherever you'd like, most effective when you have lots of Ember. If you don't, it won't do a whole ton, though its effectiveness will obviously vary based on the scenario you're in. Choking Ivy is a card that can be awkward to use and only targets the lowest powered creatures, and interestingly, only triggers twice when you're not haunted, unlike most other cards with repeated effects in this set, like Lost in the Wild. Lost in the Wild is the new iteration of Lost in the Woods, kinda mixed with Chimera Eclipse. Only hitting flank creatures gives you slightly less control over what's getting targeted, and if you have creatures near the center of a large battle line that you're trying to remove, Lost in the Wild won't be able to get the job done. You'll also have to be careful about how you construct your own battle line when this card is in play. It is bounce at the very least, which is a solid tool to have. The reprints Kangaphant and Scout can put in some work as board control as well, as can Fangtooth Cavern and, on occasion, Perilous Wild. But they really lack full board clears like they had before, or even decent targeted removal, making them pretty unreliable in this regard. Ember control is an area of weakness for Untamed and Grim Reminders. Untamed has never stopped keys that well anyway, so it's nothing new, but if you're in a pinch and you need to control Ember, Untamed should not be your first option to turn to. Emberfly has some neat tricks with capturing then moving it to your pool, but I feel it's just too small to be able to get consistent use out of. Bog Spitter has a pretty decent scrap effect, allowing you to steal one if the opponent has 6 or more, similar to Ritual of Balance in the past, and that's honestly what I find myself using him for most of the time. The Pitiful Stampede has been reprinted for some reason I can't fathom, and Murmuk has a new version, Skeletal Murmuk, which taxes opponent's keys at +2 Ember when you're haunted. Emberfly, Bog Spitter, Stampede, and Skeletal Murmuk are literally the only 4 cards in the whole house that deal with Ember control, and none of them are very effective, but again, that's to be expected from Untamed. Untamed does come back swinging with its artifact control, however. The classic Reclaimed by Nature returns, one of the best forms of artifact control out there. They also brought back Blossom Drake, a creature who gets power boosted for each artifact on board, in addition to blanking their text boxes. If you have no hard artifact removal, Blossom Drake can clutch up in some scenarios. Looking through the card pool, Untamed actually has a surprising amount of disruption this set, which was interesting to see. There's the aforementioned Kangaphant, which may deter your opponent from reaping, and the return of Pestergrove from Dark Tidings, enraging everything that comes into play. Earthbind returns as well. Then there's Dark Heart of the Forest, a card I mentioned in one of my first videos on the topic of Grim Reminders, a fairer and more balanced version of the OG infamous Heart of the Forest. Loyal Packmate is a card I've wanted to touch on for quite some time now. It's a 6-power creature with taunt that reads, enemy creatures cannot be used to fight friendly creatures unless the friendly creature has taunt. If we thought Lady Lorena was super taunt, Loyal Packmate is ultra taunt. Literally once Loyal Packmate hits the board, enemy creatures can't fight friendly creatures that don't have taunt until he leaves play, which can be super annoying depending on what else is in your line, like a Witch of the Eye or something. One area that Untamed has always specialized in is recursion. They've typically been pretty good at bringing things back from the discard pile, and things certainly haven't changed in this set. Notable reprints include Regrowth and Gravid Cycle, along with Low Dawn and Look What I Found. Witch of the Eye is back and better than ever, and the brand new Jervy, one of the most powerful witches, has a pretty sick scrap ability, and a reap ability that's no joke either. The legendary Nepenthe Seed makes its return, great for out-of-house recursion, as does World Tree and Ritual of Life. One new card that really caught players' attention is Invigorating Shower. It reads, play, choose a house, shuffle each card of that house from your discard pile into your deck. The timing on this card can be awkward, but when you're reaching near the end of your deck, you could shuffle nearly a whole house back into it, so you're drawing almost exclusively into that house for the next couple turns. Warfaline shuffles the top 5 cards of an opponent's discard pile into their deck, and Came Back Wrong is kinda like Exhume, but takes 2 power from the replayed creature and gives it poison. One of the most unique and notable recursion cards in Untamed's arsenal of this set is Forgotten Guardian. You can purge a card from a discard pile if you play him, but it's the scrap effect that really sets it apart, allowing you to shuffle a purged card back into its owner's deck. This could include things like Tachyon Manifold or Ectocharge, or perhaps something that got hit by an opponent's Infernus or Creeping Oblivion. It's one of the only cards in the whole game that retrieve purged cards, along with Poltergeistoids and Universal Recycle Bin. So overall, Untamed has some good burst, okay board control, terrible Ember control, great artifact control, a surprising amount of disruption, and fantastic recursion. Interestingly, their strength in recursion plays into their interaction with the new Haunted mechanic in some odd and fascinating ways. Being Haunted, when you have 10 or more cards in your discard pile, is one of the big new things for this KeyForge set, making it an important stat to look into as we analyze these Grim Reminders houses. Oftentimes, Grim Reminders decks want to be haunted. They thrive when in that state, but the act of recursion, or taking things out of your discard pile, makes being haunted a little more difficult. It may be harder to maintain that state or even reach it to begin with. Untamed has an interesting relationship with being haunted, and I think a large part of it is because of how much it utilizes recursion. So not only can you be constantly bringing things back from your discard pile to use again, you can simultaneously be rewarded for not being haunted as a result, since constant recursion may limit your ability to be haunted. In addition, not being haunted can help you counter the likes of Unfathomable, which can punish you hard for being haunted with things like Thought Swim and Nemoleech. Or perhaps your Untamed doesn't do much recursion. Maybe you have Geistoid and your deck cycles like crazy. In that case, Untamed can still reward you even then for being haunted. This is where problems can start arising though, and conflicts can start popping up with other houses in your deck. The other 6 houses generally prefer you to be haunted. There are very few effects to be found that reward you for not being haunted outside of Untamed. So if the other 2 houses in your deck really want you to be haunted for as much of the game as possible, and Untamed is constantly fighting against that with recursion or effects that don't want you to be haunted, things can get a little messy. It can lead to some anti-synergy in that regard. It's not always that big of a problem. Again, Untamed does still have plenty of effects that do want you to be haunted, but there is still that occasional conflict. One last thing to mention is that they do have quite a disparity in card quality, seen especially in their commons. You may hit the jackpot in some pods, hitting multiple Grave Pixies and Witch of the Eyes and Haunting Witches and Spooky Charge, while other pods may have nothing but garbage duds inside them, Blernian Hydras and Floomps and Witch of the Spores and the like. They also have a new leader to replace Eldest Bear, the Witch Queen, one of the most coveted chase cards in the set, seeing as she brings in witches as legacies from past sets and has a ridiculous passive effect. Waste Not returns, providing some big potential efficiency, comboing amazingly with just about anything in Brobnar, or especially a thing from the deep over in Unfathomable. The fan favorite Mimicry is also reprinted, with new potential both big and small every game that's played. Overall, I'd say Untamed is pretty fun in this set. They've still got plenty of that classic burst that they've always been known for, along with some very strong elements of recursion and some powerful scrap effects. In addition to bringing on board some very distinct and unusual cards, they also interact with the Haunted mechanic in their own unique ways, which has been cool to experiment with. Let me know what you guys think of House Untamed in the comments below. I would love to hear your thoughts. What points may have I missed? How has your experience been with them? I'll be covering the next 6 houses in the future, so be on the lookout for those, and be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you all again in the next one. See you later.